welcome everybody to the Move to France Q&A for March 2024. My name is Allison Grant Lounes. I am the author of Foolproof French Visas. I'm the admin of the Facebook group Americans in France, and I own the relocation agency Your Transformation, and we help people get the right visa to create their dream life in France. So today we're going to be going through the questions that were pre-submitted. I do want to, before we start, bring your attention to a couple of events. So recently on the 23rd, so about 10 days ago, we hosted the Minister Counselor of Consular Affairs, Columbia Barossa. She is one of the most important American VIPs in France because she heads up consular services at the US Embassy. And so she came to my office and we did a live stream Q&A to answer all your questions about renewing passports and other services available to Americans living in France. She did want to stress that it's really important to make sure that you understand that there are not going to be routine consular services during the Olympics and probably a little bit before and a little bit after. Access to the embassy is going to be pretty heavily restricted because there are going to be events at Place de la Concorde in Paris. And they're expecting a large number of American tourists to be in France, and therefore they're going to be saving consular appointments for emergency passport services, people who lose their passports, have them stolen, etc. So if you do have a passport, if it expires before March 2025, then you want to go ahead and renew it now. You can do that by mailing it in to the embassy in Paris. If you have minor children, I just renewed my son's passport last week. His is technically valid until January 2025, but I prefer to get it done early before the Olympics so that we don't have to worry about it when we come back. So I would highly encourage you to do that. I'm going to give you a link to the replay on our website if you do have further questions about what services the embassy can offer and how they can help you. And I do want to draw your attention to some other events that we have coming up. So of course I do these Q&As every month. The next one is going to be the beginning of April. I don't know what day, the first Monday in April. But we also have this Wednesday, we're going to be doing a overseas voting Q&A with Ada Shen. She volunteers with votefromabroad.org. So if you are an American living overseas, or if you plan to be an American living overseas, it's important that you register to vote every year. You can vote at your last residential address in the US, and you can register quickly and easily at votefromabroad.org. So I recorded a quick video of myself doing that the other day. I registered in Massachusetts. I got my ballot by email in 21 minutes. Not all states are as efficient, but I do want to encourage you to go on and register to vote. If you do have questions about the process, please come to our Q&A on Wednesday. Now, if you have not voted in a primary in the US and you're living outside of the US, you can vote in the Democrats Abroad presidential primary, a global presidential primary. And so that is basically treated like a state party for the Democratic Party. Republicans overseas do not have the same setup within the Republican Party. So Republicans have to vote in their US state primary, but Democrats can choose to vote either in their state primary where they're going to vote in the federal election, or they can vote in the Democrats Abroad global presidential primary, which is happening from tomorrow, Super Tuesday, March 5th, for 1 week until the 12th. So we're going to be covering that. Other couple of events coming up, we have a financial planning webinar for Americans living overseas with Alex Ingram. He is a financial planner who lives in Italy, and he works with Americans in France, Italy, Portugal, and Spain. He helped me do some of my own financial planning and helped me set up a retirement account. He is very helpful. And so he's going to do a short presentation on some of the major pitfalls for Americans in France, and then, of course, answer some questions, and you can have the opportunity to set up a consultation with him if you would like assistance with managing your financial assets as an American living in France. It can be a good planning tool also if you're not living in France yet, just to understand what's going to happen. And we have some people too who work with British and Canadian clients, etc. So if you're not American or a US person, then there are other people we can hook you up with. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and then after I do some of the questions, I will talk to you about some of the other people that we work with to help people who are moving to France. I want to start with some questions that were actually submitted for the consular event with the Minister Counselor of Consular Affairs. She was obviously here to answer questions about US citizen services at the embassy. And there were some people who submitted questions about French admin things. So I want to start off by answering those. Stephanie asked, do you have advice for dual US French citizens dealing with French retirement funds under the US IRA system? Yeah, this is a case where you're going to want to come to our financial planning Q&A with Allison Grant. The problem with French retirement funds is that if you invest in any type of mutual fund, it's going to be considered a PFIC by the IRS and you're going to get penalized for it. So, and the other thing to consider is that most of these retirement funds, if they're not in the US and they're not IRAs, 401ks, etc., typically they're not going to get any preferential tax-free treatment by the IRS. So generally, it's not a good deal to invest in retirement funds outside of the US or any kind of anything really. So I would highly encourage you to attend the financial planning webinar to see what those options are. We had two questions about driver's licenses. So the first one was from Gilbert. If you're exchanging a US driver's license for a French one from a US state that has an exchange, at what time does the 1-year timeline start? I'm here under a long-term visa and will be renewing after my first year to a temporary residence permit. Officially, the guidance on the website, and we have looked into this for one of our clients who cannot exchange her license and needs to pass the French driving exam. So this is hot off the press information. Residency starts at the point that you validate your visa. So technically your 1 year starts with OFI validation. Now there's a little bit of conflicting information on the different websites. There's another source that says 1 year from establishing regular residence, and they count establishing regular residence as 183 days in France. I think you can make the argument either way. Hopefully it won't come to that. The other question was the list of 18 states with driver's license reciprocity. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. We have it on our handy dandy client information dashboard. Arkansas, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Illinois, Iowa, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Hampshire, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Texas, Virginia, Wisconsin. So if you have a license from one of those states, you can exchange your license for a French license within the first year. If you do not have a license for one of those states, if you can get one before you move to France with your visa, that would be excellent. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck taking the French driving test, which I did in November, and it was not that fun. Okay, Martha, we own a house in Burgundy and usually stay 2 to 3 months at a time. How would we get a visa to extend our stay if needed? We have a French citizen in questionable health living in our property as a usufruit and wonder what would happen if he were to fall ill and we needed to stay longer. Unfortunately, there's no way to extend your stay once you're in France. Under some very, very exceptional services, like the person who was ill could request staying for medical reasons, but there's not really a caregiver provision in there. So, and especially if there's no family legal relationship, I don't think that you would be able to do that. I mean, your best case scenario would be hopping back to the US and applying for a visa and then going back. And maybe if you say we, so if there were two of you, then maybe alternating going back in a different order. There's not a great way to do that. During COVID, we had some luck. I did a couple of exceptional admission requests for people who were here on temporary or non-renewable visas who needed help to renew to take care of somebody, but it's really pretty much impossible to get any kind of exception on that point now that COVID is pretty much over. Well, the COVID restrictions are over. Kelly, we're planning to rent an apartment in Paris this fall winter to do a test run of living in France. We plan to stay 3 months, but we're going to be in Spain 2 weeks prior to walking the Camino. So that will put me over the 90-day Schengen visa. Is there anything I can do in order to extend, or do you think it's best to go ahead and apply for a long-stay visitor visa? You can apply for a 4-month visa from the consulate. You don't have to apply for a 12-month visa if you plan on going back, but I mean, I guess it depends, like, how long do you plan on the gap being between your initial 3-month stay in France and then, like, actually moving to France if it works out? Like, does it actually make sense to do a short-term visa go back to the US and then come back to France? That is a question that I can't answer for you. What other kinds of visas might we be eligible for if I run an online business and my partner works remotely for his company as a web developer? If you run an online business, then you need to set up a business activity in France. If your partner works remotely, then either his company needs to sponsor him for a visa if he will be working in France, or he needs to set up as a consultant or self-employed and invoice them as a contractor, which gets them out of a whole lot of legal obligations related to having employees in France. But then technically, he's supposed to have more than one client. I would need a little bit more details to know exactly what the best type of visa would be. If you haven't read Foolproof French Visas yet, I would give that a go, and that should help you pick out what the best options would be for self-employment or for the remote work. You can also schedule an hour-long consultation with me where we can talk through all of the options and figure out the best way to do it. I'm going to put the link to schedule a consultation with me in the chat. And this is a thing going back to the driver's license question about if you're exchanging your driver's license in order to get a license from a state that you can exchange for a French license. Technically, that changes your residence in the US, and that should be the state where you're voting after you move over here. In some states, you want to be really careful because it can get you signed up for things like jury duty. And in certain states, it can be very hard to get out of jury duty, even if you then live abroad. So you do want to be careful if you have that as a strategy to make sure you exchange your license quickly so that you don't get roped into like jury duty in Florida, where you can get in trouble for skipping it and you can't get out of it for being in France. Ellen, what documents do I need to file my French tax return? I have real estate income and capital gains in the US as well as Social Security. So we actually have a sample tax declaration video in Fast Track to France. I'm going to see if I can get a French tax person to do a little workshop and Q&A with us. It depends a little bit. So capital gains in the US are going to be reported on one of the main tax forms, which I think is, so the main tax form is 2042. And then there's also form 2047, which is the foreign income tax return, where you're going to report that those capital gains and that rental income are US source and therefore not subject to social charges like CSG, CRDS, and they're not subject to income tax in France. So they could potentially push up your taxable income in France, and they could push you up into a higher tax bracket, but it's not going to be taxed itself. Real estate income, it depends a little bit. If it's Schedule E and you're deducting a bunch of expenses, it's probably going to be Form 2044. I'm also going to go ahead and put in the chat. So we have a library or a network of partners that we work with on various topics. And so I put together a form to fill out with details about the people. I put together a form that you can fill out basically to see if you need referrals to some of the partners that we work with. We work with partners in banking, insurance, tax prep, and financial planning, apartment search, et cetera, et cetera. Some of these professionals we may get commissions from sometimes. Some of them we don't, and we just know that they provide a really good service. I'm happy to be more transparent if you want to ask me particular questions about any referrals that we send you. Sometimes we have special offers for our clients. Like I have a special deal with the building where my office is, so that if you sign up for like a domiciliation service with the building that I have my office in Paris, you get 2 months free, for example. So these are some things that we've negotiated on behalf of the Americans in France community and of our Transformation clients specifically. So if you do want referrals to some of these partners, we're happy to set you up with them. Like I said, we may get a little bit of commission, but mostly we're just doing it out of the goodness of our knowing who the good people are serving the Americans in France community. And we want to make sure you're working with trusted professionals. So if you do want the French tax recommendations, Ellen, please go ahead and fill that out. Zora, long-term visitor retirement visa, what's the best site or sites to use when setting up healthcare coverage when applying for a long-term visa? So there are a couple of different options. I always send our clients 3 different quotes. So if you want to fill out the the partnership questionnaire. I'm happy to have the quotes sent to you. Two of them we get a small commission from, one of them we don't. You want to look for a policy that covers the following: 30,000 euros of coverage, valid for 1 year in the entire Schengen space, no deductible, includes repatriation. Now, there are a couple of things that you want to be aware of. One is that there are a lot of policies where you pay by the month. They end up being more expensive in many cases than the policies that we get where you pay the whole year up front. So if you're paying like 800 euros for the year versus paying 200 or 300 euros a month for 1 year, obviously you're getting a better deal with the policy that you pay the whole thing up front. It can take, in some cases, a whole year to get onto the French healthcare system. We have one client who has provided the same documents over and over and over. We've done her renewal. She has still not gotten a response from SAPOM. It's pretty rare. Most of our clients get in within the first 6 months, but you never know. So you don't want to have something that is you're not going to be canceling it after 6 months, even if you have a month-to-month policy in most cases. And the consulate does want to see proof of the whole year at the time of your visa application. Another thing to keep in mind too is that nationality can play a role, aside from age, which obviously can impact the cost of the policy. Nationality can play a role in the price. So there are certain policies that are designed specifically for Brits, which have to include certain clauses per the Brexit agreement, and that makes the policies much more expensive. So unfortunately, like, policies geared towards Brits are 2 to 3 times as expensive as those that work for the visa for Americans. When visiting France for 30 to 90 days to explore living locations for long term, how do I handle my Arizona driver's license so I can rent a car in France, likely Central France, Tours, Amboise, and Bordeaux? When you're here as a tourist, you can drive on your license, and you want to either get an international driver's permit from AAA, or you can just get a certified translation of your license, and it's not a problem. Lauren, if I'm 66 and have Social Security and some savings, but I'm still working as a freelance artist and interested in hosting artist workshops and retreats in France, should I get the talent visa or retirement visa? What's better if I'm hoping to buy a home studio and live in France permanently? It sounds to me like you want to run a business, so you're probably going to go either for the Profession Liberale visa if your business is going to be more focused on providing the services of running workshops and teaching and having retreats, or you can do the artist visa if there's going to be an element of selling your work, displaying it in galleries, etc. The artist visa gives you a little bit more flexibility because it allows you to do multiple types of activities as long as they're all linked to your primary art activity. So for example, if you're on the artist visa, you could get hired as a salaried teacher for an art school to do a weekly art class or to run a workshop or whatever. But you could also register your self-employment activity, and then you could also sell your art through galleries, which would be a whole different setup. So it can be a little bit more complicated, but ultimately it provides more flexibility. So you'll need to do a project plan, and you'll need to have some opportunities for working in France. I'm confused about the order of things to be done. I'm renewing my passport now. Good. Obviously, that's first is having a new and up-to-date passport. We'll visit France to scope out the areas, put my house on the market, and hoping to move with my dogs this summer, but I need to put down a French and US address for the visa application. So how long does it take to get the visa? Okay, so normally what people do is have a temporary address in France where you're renting for about a month while you're looking for a long-term rental or long-term address. The buying process in France does take 3 to 4 months in most cases. So even if you're planning on buying a property and you find the property you love as soon as you get here, you're not necessarily going to have a completed sale to move into right when you arrive. The exception to that would be like if you find a property where a sale has previously fallen through and the owners prepped all of the documents and all you have to do is show up and sign, then that's a little bit different. But in most cases, you want to have a temporary address like an Airbnb. You want to find a long-term rental, and then simultaneously, while you're doing all of that, look for a property to purchase. In terms of the address, the US address that you put on your visa application, it doesn't really matter. You can still put your home address on the visa application, even if the home is in the process of being sold. You're going to have your passport shipped back to you. So you just need to make sure the UPS delivery guy is going to deliver it to a trusted friend or a place of business where you could pick it up or somewhere where you can get it, because obviously you don't want to have something shipped back to a home that you no longer live in with new buyers that you don't know at all. Zoe, how important is the French client for a profession libérale visa if I will already be earning beyond the minimum requirement from UK-based clients as a remote virtual assistant? The consulate issues visas to people who have business interests in France. If you put together a visa application and you don't have any French-based clients, you're going to get rejected for a profession libérale. For Passeport Talent, it's a little bit different, but you definitely want to have some kind of connection to France, regardless of how much income you'll have from non-French sources. I'll be purchasing my property outright through the sale of my UK home, so it'll be mortgage-free. Is the financial backing an attractive enough prospect for approval? No, you have to have some type of French interest. And this is one of the things that we work with on our clients. Like, we have a lot of clients in situations similar to this one. And so what we do is we look at the business plan and your ties to France that are already existent, and then we look at the types of people that we could potentially get letters of support from. And you don't need a lot, right? Like, you need a couple. You need two is great. Two is great. In most cases, that's going to be more than sufficient. So if you're not sure about how to write the business plan and what types of clients you want to include in that, you can schedule a consultation with me, or you can use one of our programs where we talk through the types of letters of support that are going to get your visa approved. Cassidy, for the documents I need to submit for travailleur temporaire and my visa appointment with BFS, do any need to be translated in French? And if so, do they need to be legalized? Things like your work contract should be in French because presumably those documents are written in French. In terms of your own documents, like your degree or your bank statements, those do not need to be translated. You can submit documents to the French consulates or the VFS offices that are in French or English. Do you need to have a background check done and submitted for your visa application at the VFS office? It depends on your visa type, and I don't have the list for travailleur temporaire in front of me. The main visa type that you need a background check for is the Passeport Talent Entrepreneur. And even those can be like an online. We had one client who didn't know that it wasn't on her list of documents before the visa appointment. And so she showed up and they asked her for it. And she literally stepped out and did one on her phone on one of those online sites, and it was fine. So, Michelle, do we need to change our VLSTS visitor, I guess, visa to a work type visa, but have not yet renewed it once? Do we need to wait until after this visa's expiration date to begin the new visa application? Or do we need to simply schedule the VFS? So my advice to you, if you have a visitor visa and you want to change your status, you don't say to what status you want to change it, but I would say, and I know we're talking on Thursday, we have a call scheduled, but I would say that you want to renew your visitor visa, and then once you pick up your carte de séjour, at that point, we submit the change of status application. I would not suggest going home in this circumstance and applying for a new visa. Although it's faster. It's faster. If you wait till the end of your visa, you go to the US and you apply for a new visa, like that can be faster. Unless you have to wait for work authorizations and all kinds of things. If we're working remotely while on our visitor visa, should we avoid applying for French mutuelle health insurance? No, nobody is going to have anything to say about that, and they're certainly not going to know or care if you're working remotely when you shouldn't be. I'm concerned it might cost us extra somehow if we apply and later it's discovered we owe French taxes. So the mutuelle is a private policy. So that fee does not vary for a mutuelle, which is a top-up healthcare coverage plan. Now, what you seem to be talking about is Puma and whether or not, like, technically, you should be paying French social charges on your earned income, right? That's what the tax treaty says. And your earned income is income that you earn from self-employment, business activity, or salary while you are a tax resident of France. That being said, if you have not been caught or called to regularize by the tax office. My suggestion would be to get into compliance and not call attention to anything that you may or may not have done inappropriately when you didn't know better. That would be my advice. Erin, of course I'm going to answer your questions, Erin. Okay, my 2023 taxes, my first year, are so simple that I intend to do them myself. Yeah, because I think you did not have any auto entrepreneur income during that first year in France. And so there's no French income to report in the US. And for your French stuff, most of that happened before you even moved here. Most of your US income was before you even moved here. On my US tax return, do I put my US or Paris address? I would say you want to put your Paris address, especially because I think you're California, and California is notoriously hard to cut ties with. It's really hard to become no longer a resident of California. Does my Social Security I collect in the US get reported on just my US tax return? So technically, US Social Security needs to be reported on a French tax declaration, but it's considered a foreign pension and it's not taxed. So in that case, you're going to report it on Form 2042, box, I believe 1AS, where it's for pensions. And then on box 2047, you're going to indicate that it's US source pension and therefore not subject to French tax. Or you get a French tax credit equal to what the French tax would have been. Can I file my FBAR myself, or is it better to have a professional help? For FBAR, they're not that complicated. It's mostly listing your accounts and your bank account information and account numbers and the highest balance during the year. I would say that there's not much of a value add from having a professional do it. I think that maybe we should have an FBAR party for the Americans in France group where everybody can come and do their FBARs together over a glass of wine and potentially some crying. So maybe I'll see if I can organize that for the month of April. As a note, your FBAR is technically due with your tax declaration. As US citizen or US taxpayers living overseas, we have until June 15th to file the tax declaration, and the FBAR, we get an extra 2-month extension automatically. And then we can extend also through December 15th. Ralph, how many pets can be brought for a relocation to France? 5. I actually don't know if that means 5 of the same animal or 5 total. But I mean, the rules about importing pets typically are or animals, it's typically if it's more than 5, then it's more considered like commercial. And that's per person. Emma, spouse of an EU national, carte de séjour. I'm struggling to find an understandable list of what documents I will need translated and which apostille to apply for the spouse of an EU citizen, carte de séjour. Also struggling to find out if I need to have the translations or apostille done by specific organizations or if I'm free to choose. The list of documents is covered in foolproof French visas, and this is also a thing that we do for our clients. We have lots of clients, who are EU citizens and have non-EU spouses that we do the carte de séjour application for. So this is something that we handle. Now, in terms of documents, you're going to need a birth certificate, a marriage certificate. If the country that the EU spouse is from is a country that does like a livret de famille, you're going to need documents from that country. So, for example, we have a client from Hungary. She needed to register her marriage with the Hungarian government and get a Hungarian copy of the marriage certificate. Some countries, like I think Spain, Italy, has something similar to a livret de famille, which I think is called a libretto. And so if Italy requires that an Italian citizen register the marriage with them and get the libretto and the Italian marriage certificate, then those are going to be the EU documents that you need to provide to France. Typically, you can get multilingual versions of these documents from the EU country's government. They will normally issue documents with either English or French with the language of that country. So the best thing to do is to just get a multilingual version so you don't have to do any translations. And technically, France is not supposed to ask for translations of EU documents. They're just supposed to issue the multilingual versions. You shouldn't really need anything with an apostille, I don't think, especially since in the EU. And then you'll need like you need a passport, you need proof of insurance coverage for the EU person who is sponsoring the non-EU person. And then you also need bank statements or proof of financial resources for the non sorry, for the EU person, because technically the EU citizen is sponsoring the non-EU spouse, and so needs to show that they can financially support the non-EU spouse. Mo, I will be shipping personal belongings, considerable library, art, some heirlooms within our first year to avoid taxes. We prefer to rent for some time to determine where we want to permanently reside and perhaps purchase a property. Where can I safely store our belongings if we don't have long-term rental or purchase within that first year? So first of all, you do want to get a long-term rental within the first year, and you can absolutely rent an unfurnished property. That being said, there are plenty of storage solutions like Une Pièce en Plus and things like that where they're similar to storage facilities in the US. And you should definitely, as you said, get your belongings here within the first year so you don't have to pay the import duties and keep them in storage until you can move them into your long-term house. But you need to have a longer term place within the first couple months anyway, because you need to validate all of your admin stuff to an address where you can get mail and where you're going to be staying. What speaks most effectively to a French landlord to persuade to rent to a US expat? Assets such as investments are not viewed positively. We'll be moving at the onset of our retirement, so we won't have history of Social Security and pension payments as much as proof of impending Social Security and pension payments, plus a sum of dollars in our US credit. So in that case, you're going to probably need an insurance policy from a lease guarantee service. And so we work with Garant Me. So if you want to fill out our little referrals and partners questionnaire, we can absolutely refer you to Garant Me, and they will take into account your US assets and future pension payments in determining how much they can sort of insure you for or guarantee you for to a landlord. We also have a couple of real estate search agents that we work with for rental properties. So depending on the area, you didn't say what area. Yeah, so depending on the area, we work with about 3 or 4 different agents who work all over France, and they can help you to persuade the landlord to work with you and use the Garant Me or the lease guarantee service in lieu of a guarantor. Lauren, I'm a US citizen applying for a 1-year visitor visa. My question is to do with the 6-month rule, whereby this visa requires you to live in France 6 months of the year. I need to be in Berlin 6 months of the year, and sometimes it could go over the 6 months. So first of all, they're not tracking your days between France and Germany. Technically, if you have a visa for France, you're supposed to still follow the 90 out of 180 day rule for the other EU countries. That being said, there are no controls within the EU borders, and so your passport's not getting stamped. How are they going to know? You need to follow. I would say that in that case, you need to have your main residence in France, and you're certifying when you apply for a French visa that the purpose of your stay is to be in France and that you're going to be establishing residency in France. So I would say you need an address in France and you need to maintain it for the whole duration of the 1-year visa. Technically, if you don't have a visa to stay in Germany, you can't stay 6 months in Germany on your French visa, unless it's in the respect of the 90 out of 180 day rule. So this sounds to me like you're trying to subvert Schengen laws, which is not something that I'm going to encourage you to do. Fran, I'm a dual citizen, American and Belgian. My husband's American. We're planning to move to France in June. What steps do we have to take so he can live there? We'll be retired. Okay, so the most important thing to know is that you need to apply for his carte de séjour within 90 days of arrival. So that means that you need to have a place to live with an address and bills where you can get mail within 90 days of arrival so that you can submit the carte de séjour request on time. You're also going to need, as I said before, you need health insurance for you as the sponsoring EU citizen, and you need proof of financial resources so that you can sponsor him. And then you're just going to need things like marriage certificate, your Belgian passport or proof of nationality, things like that. And again, that's something that we can help with if you need help. Colby, we're looking at your packages and want to do the all-inclusive one. Will this cover our entire family or is this per person? So we have a rate for one person or a couple, and then but it's not twice as much, right? Like, because there's the economy of scale. If we're doing 2 of your visa applications, it doesn't take twice as long to gather all the documents and do the forms. It takes 40% as long to do the second person. And then all of our packages include kids for free, up to 3 kids. I mean, if you have like 17 kids, then at some point I'm going to charge extra, but up to 3 kids are included for sure. We'll have rental income and my husband's military disability income not taxed in the US. And we want to move to France and work for ourselves. Is there someone during this process of working with your team? Yes. So yeah, so we'll do the business package then for setting you up to be self-employed. We handle the business registration. We show you how to do your income declarations, your first invoices, all of that. And then, as I said, we're not accountants and we're not financial planners, but we do work with some really good ones. So I would also encourage you to do things like attend the financial planning webinar on the 12th, or to at least get in touch with Alex Ingram, who's the guy doing it, who can answer some of your questions and provide some financial planning advice. Things like military disability are not even going to be on the French government's radar. That is one of the few things that does not get reported at all in France. Military disability, any kind of disability, and things like government, let's call them like government aid payments. Like if you get CAF in France, you don't have to report it in the US. If you get disability or RSA in France, that's not reportable in the US. Like things that are considered social payments are not taxable per the tax treaty. Paul, for the 1-year visitor that is renewable each year, is it required to be in France for a certain number of days to maintain that status? So, I mean, technically, if you're a resident of France, you're supposed to be in France at least 183 days. Now, a couple of notes on that. One, if you're not actually leaving the EU, nobody's tracking your days. 2, the areas where they're most concerned about people staying less than 183 days are cases in which the person is getting benefits from the French government. So if you're on RSA, if you're getting unemployment, if you're getting sick pay, things like that, they're trying to crack down on people who are getting these benefits, but who are actually living in other countries. If that's not your situation, the main thing that could be of concern is if one, you have to be here for certain things like the medical visit when you arrive, and there's certain admin things that you need to do, like get set up on the French healthcare system. If you're not here, it can be tricky to provide the documents that you need to provide in order to get on and stay on the French healthcare system. They have been really picky recently about requiring documents with bills showing consumption to show that you are actually residing in the place that you are sending bills for. So if, for example, we're sending electric bills to SEPAM, like it's electric bills showing that you are consuming electricity in the lodging that you say that you're living in. So keep that in mind. Like you don't live in multiple places. If you're living in France, you're living in France. And I think there's been a couple questions today. I answered a lot of questions like this at the French property show in London. Like you can keep one foot or like even a couple of toes in your home country, but during the first year, it's pretty much a full-time occupation to get into the French system. And there's no such thing as being a tax resident in 2 places. There's no such thing as living in France all the time, but paying taxes in your home country. It's a new system. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of admin to do. That's why my job exists. That's why I have a team to help me who are wonderful. And I know that it's scary and it seems like a lot of work, but we're here to guide you through the process of leaving the system that you're in behind, telling you what you can keep, and then guiding you into making sure you're set up in the new system appropriately. At some point, there are things in your home country that you have to let go of if you're living here and you're staying here. Okay, so does anybody have any additional questions to put in the Q&A or in the chat? I have answered all the questions that were submitted beforehand. I do want to say again, I will put the link in the chat again if you want to fill out our little partnership questionnaire so that we can refer you to some of the partners that I've talked about today. So like I said, we have real estate agents who do both rental and property to purchase searches. We work with some rent guarantee services that will work as a guarantor for a French landlord. We have a bank partner and several insurance partners. We also have some currency transfer services. If you are looking to buy a property and transfer a lot of money, you're definitely going to want to use a service that has a real person. I love Wise. I use it as one of my main accounts. I do not recommend using it as your main account if you are transferring 200,000 euros to buy a house in France. Just just for the fact of like, if your money gets lost, there's no person. If your money takes longer to get there, there's no person. We're going to put the recording, so Lacey will edit it hopefully tomorrow. I've given her a lot of projects. So I'll put the recording on our YouTube channel, and normally it should go out in tomorrow's newsletter. So if it doesn't go out in the newsletter, then at least it'll be on our YouTube channel within a couple of days, and I'll put it out in next week's newsletter. I'm also live streaming to social media, so theoretically you could go and find the recording on Facebook as well. How long a visa should we get if we just want to stay at our French property on and off for a total of 6 months? It sounds like in that case you will need a 6-month visa, because if you're going back and forth, I mean, either you would have to have a visa for the whole 6 months, or you would have to apply for the visa after you've exhausted your 90 days in France. It depends on if you're not respecting the 90 out of 180-day rule. There's something else that I wanted to say. Yeah, so in terms of scheduling a consultation, if there's not something that works for you because of the time zone that you're in, I can try to find a time if you give me some options. I typically don't, there are certain days that I typically like close off to new Zooms so that I don't end up Zooming for 40 hours a week, because that's terrible. But I can usually, I keep enough free space in my schedule, so if we need to Zoom with a client at the last minute, like we have somebody, we finished her visa application early, her house is getting sold, so we're like, okay, well, let's move up your visa appointment and do it on Wednesday the 6th instead of the 18th. And so we did that, and so I was able to squeeze her in today before the Q&A. So I always have like some open spots available for emergencies or for last minute consultations. So if you want to email me, Colby, I can and give me some suggested times, and then I will open up a slot for you. And just a reminder too, that if you do a consultation with me, it's 297 euros. You get an hour of my time to ask me all the questions that you want. And I mean, usually I am also asking you the questions that you don't think necessarily to ask. And you can apply that to any of our packages within 90 days as a credit. So if you are planning on working with us, but you have a lot of questions to ask first, worst case scenario, you get an hour's worth of information out of me to help you make your plans, even if it means that that plan then happens later, but you avoided some expensive mistakes. And best case scenario, you're ready to get started, and then you sign up relatively quickly and get that 297 as a credit towards one of our service packages. See, any other questions? All right, wonderful. Well, if there's no other questions right now, then I'm going to let you all go, say and tell you thank you for attending this Q&A. So again, I just want to remind you of our upcoming events. We have on Wednesday, March 6th, so that's in 2 days at 6 p.m. France time, we're going to have a Vote from Abroad Q&A with Ada Shen, and that's going to be about registering to vote as an American living overseas. Ideally, you'll end up with your ballot request submitted if you haven't already. Then next Tuesday, the 12th, we're going to have this Financial Planning for Americans in France webinar and Q&A with Alex Ingram, who's a certified financial planner serving Americans living in France, Portugal, Italy, and Spain. And what else? We're also trying to organize a currency and insurance Q&A probably the last week of the month. So looking forward to scheduling that as well. And then the next Q&A, I'm going to tell you the date by looking at my calendar. So the next Q&A, so Monday the 1st is a holiday. It's Easter Monday in France and a jour férié. So we're going to be doing the Q&A on Monday, April 8th. Monday, April 8th will be the next Q&A. So if you're already on the list, look out for it. And then, of course, as I said, you can go back and watch the Q&A with Columbia Barossa. And then there was also the French Riviera house hunting if you're looking to purchase or rent a property in Nice or anywhere on the French Riviera. I did a Q&A with Fabricio Carminati of French Riviera House Hunting last Monday, and that one's on our website as well. So a lot of free entertainment information, daydreaming fodder if you're in the early stages of your planning. So yeah, look forward to seeing you at another one of our events, and thanks for coming. Have a good rest of your day, and congratulations, France, for having women's rights in the Constitution. Have a good night.